I'm going to show you guys the best fast build in Armored Core 6. So this is actually going to be the fastest build that still makes any sense at all. The only way you can be faster is by taking the weapons off, basically. So for this build, you'll see all the stuff on the left. We're going to go through all that. But first things first, if you want to go fast and just get it, you can go here and use the download thing in order to download it. So I'm going to put this in the description of the video, but also you'll be able to see it right here on the video. I'm uploading it right now. And you'll be able to use this code on the download part in order to, you know, download this to yours and then just have it auto-configure. Now, this thing's got a bunch of different parts. I don't know what, you know, part of the game each of these parts came from. It's just impossible at this point for me in the game to be able to keep track of which ones came from which chapters. So if you don't have something and you want something similar, just, you know, work with what you got. I'm on New Game Plus, almost on New Game Plus when I made this, so I have most of the things, but not everything. So I just don't know where I got each thing. Other than the guilds, I know some Depth 2 Chapter 4. I know that offhand. That's one of the only ones here that I know for a fact was from a chest or something. Now, I call this build the Dual Striker, and I actually have a reason that I call it that. And actually, right now, it doesn't even have the guns on it that we're supposed to be using. So I just now beat the Arquebus Balteus fight as part of the video I was making for this. So I had to put on the pulse guns instead. Yeah, pulse guns. But that's not what we're going to use the majority of the time. Ideally, you're going to use the ducats. If you don't have them, you can use the quillets or whatever they're calling, how to say the word. That's the one you get earlier in the game, and later on you'll get the ducat. They're basically the same gun. Ducat's just like a better version of the same gun. And you're going to use the ducat because it does a lot of damage, and it also can stun. Now, I like to start off with the ducat on the shoulder because on the left arm, I like to have the laser dagger, even though you can just put it on the shoulder. It doesn't really matter if one's on the hand and one's on the shoulder. It doesn't really matter that much. But either way, I'd like to start off with it in my hand. I don't know why. It's just something in my head. But anyway, we use the laser dagger. The laser dagger is actually insanely, unbelievably god tier strong with this setup, the way that we're going to, you know, roll this out. If you don't know how to use the dual wielding stuff, or not dual wielding, but swapping your gun, you go to the arena and you do these to get those operating system tuning chips. And then you go into here and you buy the weapon bay. It's only one operating system tuning chip. And then once you buy that, then you can go into here. And then when you go to put these on, you can see on these ones, there's two little boxes now. And you can press these on keyboards QE. On controller, I assume it's like R1, L1 or something. And you use those in order to rotate between these. And that's how you get to the second tabs of these, in order to put the gun on if you need to or something like that. But if you need something else for a different level, you can always swap the guns out. But the main thing you'll almost always want to keep is the laser dagger. It weighs almost nothing, and it does an insane amount of damage when enemies are staggered. It's an insanely strong weapon to use. So we'll explain why. I'll explain why in a sec. But first, let's take a look at the gear. So this headpiece is straightforward. It's just the lightest headpiece in the game. The chest piece is not the lightest in the game, but we use this one because it has booster efficiency adjustment and generator supply adjustment. It's all these different things, and it just gives us exactly what we need out of the choices we have. I don't really remember exactly why I went exactly for this one, but I know I spent literally like 20 minutes crunching the numbers and doing the math and testing in the AC test thing, and this was the one I went with. I'm not even going to try to say the name of this one. The 40E, we'll say, was the best option for what we're going to be using here. Balances everything and gets us just enough energy supply efficiency and all that stuff that we need. Then for the arms, we just put on these because they're the lightest arms. We don't even need arms. We just need them because we have to have them. And, I mean, we have to hold guns, I guess. And then the legs, we're actually going to be using these legs right here. And the reason we use these legs is very straightforward. They are the lightest legs in the game. And the whole point of this is to make the fastest build possible. And not only make the fastest build possible, but make like an S tier fastest build possible. And this is one of the things we're going to use. We're going to use those really lightweight legs. Now we get to the inner pieces. And this is where it gets really interesting. So these, again, I said you get these Chapter 4, Depth 2 is the name of the mission. Something Depth 2. And I can't remember the name of the mission, but it's Depth 2. And you can find this in a chest in there. And this one is the best for the fastest build. Hands down, I tested everything. It's just not worth having anything else. And the reason for that is really, really simple, actually. So the reason that we do that is for this stat right here, the quick boost reload time. You notice it's 0.3 seconds. Now, yours might be different if you're not on this build because that's a combination of the actual booster's base reload time combined with your, I think your weight. I think it was based off your total weight. So the more weight, here's weight. The more weight you put on, the slower these things become and stuff like that. Maybe the generator effects and the chest piece. I can't remember how they all intertie. I did the math when I was making this, but it's been like a day now or half a day, and I've forgotten the exact math, but it all made sense. But if you go to something else, you'll notice that quick boost reload time, 0.7, 0.58, 0.5, and you might think to yourself, well, maybe I'll just get the 0.5 and, you know, it'll still be fast, and then I'll be able to boost further and stuff like that. And that is an option. You could do that, actually. You could actually do that, and it wouldn't be the worst thing ever. But, man, I can tell you, 0.5 to 0.3 is a pretty mind-blowing difference. And 0.3 lets you be so fast, it's just mind-numbing how fast you can be by just juking around and dodging everything. Like, the level of skill cap that you add to this build goes through the roof by just that one little bit of difference, where suddenly you can go in and zigzag in and go around things, and just like you can maneuver around things that you otherwise would not be able to maneuver around. So that's why I like the gills. The gills are just insane for that. Then for the PCS, we just have the FC008 Talbot, and the only reason is it just has really good close range assist and medium range assist, and that's all we're going to need for this. We want close range as much as possible. Finally, the generator. It was the DFGN08 SAN TAI, and we use this for a few different reasons. The main reason being that it has the highest energy capacity of the things that make sense for this build, but then also it has good energy recharge, supply recovery, and all this stuff. And it has enough, so if you don't know how this works here, the energy output, if your total energy load is less than your energy output, then it'll give you more energy supply efficiency, which basically just means your battery recharges faster. So this one has enough energy output when combined with that special chest piece that I picked. That chest piece had whatever it was, efficiency, that makes this go a little bit higher, I think is what it was, why I picked that. I can't remember, but there was something like that. But either way, it gives us enough. 3,600 is enough to be okay, but then give you enough energy capacity to spam the hell out of your movement when it matters. You can do like 10 boosts in a row or 12 in a row or something like that. Whereas if you do something like, say, the VP20, it will, you won't be able to do as many boosts, but because your energy supply efficiency is so high because of that excess energy output, you'll recharge super fast, but at the cost of your recharge delay is 1.27, which doesn't sound like a lot more, but it is a lot. Because with this build, a lot of times what happens is you do a few dodges and you only have like 1.2 seconds before the next enemy attack, and then you got to dodge again. So with this one that we use, your recharge being 0.77, you get a little bit back during your downtime, and it increases the odds that you can just boost dodge forever without having to have a long wait where you can't do, you just don't do anything to try to get it back, which can be the difference between life or death on most fights. And that's the reason why we want this. That's a very, very important reason why we want that. There are other ones at different balances, but out of all the ones I tested, that one had the best balance for what we need for the fastest build. Finally, I just get pulse armor. So that if you need to do something where you're gonna get the hell beaten out of you, or a boss has something that's gonna, like, no matter what hit you because you don't know how to dodge it, use pulse armor. I don't need a level 2 of it, but I need to buy level 2 of it, so I have more of them to use. And that's the build. That's the build right there. And real quick, the paint, I just do this on everything. It was black on everything. So I just go to this, and then preset in the black down here. And then the sub was this yellow right here. And then the device was this red right here. And then the weathering, just no weathering at all, so it looks clean. And that's it for the paint. So real fast, let's take a quick look at this in the AC test, and then we're going to look at clips from boss fights. I always like to show them off on bosses because that will give you the best idea of how they work and how it'll actually play out. So you can see right now, I'm already extremely, extremely fast. And with the gills, I can boost this fast. And you can see how that could get insane. You makes it so you can do whatever you want. And you see how fast it recharges? Look at the bottom. Look how fast I recharge. So I only need a little bit of downtime in order to be able to get all my battery back. That's why we picked this one instead of the V, whatever it was, 20D. That's what makes this insane. So real quick, let me show you this on a trainer AC, and then we're going to take a look at all the bosses. So the main thing here is we take out both of the ducats, and then we hold on, okay, take out the ducats, and then we go in here and we dodge and then spam them and try to just hit the enemy. And then once we stun them, I just went way too early. Once we stun them, oh my god, to reload. once we stun them, then we go into the laser dagger. And if you don't know, the laser dagger has an insanely fast cooldown. You can see how fast you can spam it here. So for some boss fights, you can actually use it more than once. So I'm just showing you the spam time. So yeah, you see how fast this is? So you can literally go around and you can do things that you wouldn't be able to do. All right, this guy can't be hit by melee. But you can do this crazy maneuvering. It's actually insane. All right, so that's that. That's a rough look at the build. Let's take a look at the boss fight. So I beat most of the major bosses. I mean, all the major bosses I have unlocked by New Game Plus. So I beat the final boss. I beat Balteus. I beat everything that matters. And let's take a look at all those clips. I'm going to talk to you about the strengths and weaknesses and the things that you need to know about in this build before you go deeper into this. So first, we're going to take a look at Balteus. This was the first boss that I fought using this build and testing it out, so I was still a little shaky on how to use it. And I'm not going to lie, going into this, I thought, there is no way in hell this thing's going to be able to beat Balteus easily. There is no way. That's what I thought going into it. Turned out, it was actually extremely easy to beat Balteus with this build. I think I beat him on my second try or something, third try, something like that. And I didn't have experience. I could probably go back to him now and just beat him 100% of the time now that I fought like 5 different bosses with this build. Turns out that speed makes it so you can actually dodge the missiles. You get hit by like 1 or 2 or something instead of getting hit for 2,000 damage each time. The most dangerous thing was the fire, and that's only because I've never actually fought Balteus enough times to know how to dodge the fire other than just getting right underneath them. I mean, I know that, like, I don't know how to see the cue of it coming. Because if you see it coming with this build, you can actually just back off really far away and probably not get hit, or go all the way in and go underneath them or something. I just don't have enough experience with the basic Balteus fight. Every guide I made was on how to cheese him or how to just tank build him and smash him in the face or something like that. But either way, this build actually worked wonders on this guy, and I was able to work down his shield with the ducket guns, and then just use the laser dagger 2 different times. Sometimes, I think only 2 different times. I don't think I was able to get him with 3 in a row. But you can with 2 in a row before he flies away. And that does a lot of damage to Balteus. And then you just kind of just repeat that. And just anytime he does anything, you're so fast, you just dodge it. Only thing was the fire. It was the only thing I had to worry about because I'm just not familiar enough to know exactly how to look for it or dodge it. So yeah, Balteus was a cakewalk. It was actually really easy, especially if you have a lot of experience with this game in general. So next is the Sea Spider. And this one I thought might be pretty easy, and it was really, really easy with this build. It actually was insanely easy. I almost beat it first try. I just was kind of sloppy because I was testing out some things with dodging, the ability that I suck at dodging, the one where he shoots like the fireball at you. And the second time I was more aggressive. You can literally just, whenever he does the charge up thing on his top and he's going to fire at you with lasers or whatever, you just dash at him and get underneath him, go right around him and spin circles around him, and he won't hit you. It's easy, and after that, it's just the easiest fight ever. You just stay kind of close, but not too close. Spam with the ducats, and then when he charges the laser, you just start spinning circles around his base, and you can't do anything. And then the second stage, you kind of just, go down, go up, and shoot him with ducats till he's stunned, and then laser dagger is facing. Anytime he's stunned, you laser dagger is facing. But then after that, we get to the next boss, and that's where things get a little bit different. So the next boss that I tested this on was actually the Vesper fight. You fight 2 different mechs with an ally. And he was really good for this. But this is also where you start to realize something that you need to know about with this build. This build is actually really insanely strong. One of the strongest builds in the game. But unlike the full assault build that I posted about, this build actually requires player skill and game knowledge. So if you're coming to this game and you're still struggling with just normal mechanics and stuff and normal just random builds, this build might be very difficult for you to use because it requires you to know when is an enemy's dodge on cooldown? When is he going to attack? What are those attacks going to be like? What types of movement should I use to dodge these things and stuff? So starting from here is where we start to run into some of those issues where at this point I'm so familiar with the game, I kind of take it for granted. So I went to this fight and I just won it first try. It wasn't even that hard at all. I think I only lost like 10,000 AP, including my heals or something. That was my first try. I got an S rank on it just immediately. But if you are not familiar with it, then it's not going to be as good. And again, this is a very high skill cap build. Any fast build is going to be, but this one more than any extremely high skill cap build. So if you want to get better at this game and you want to feel like a master of this game, that you're insanely skilled at it, that's when you want to use this build, and that's what this build requires to get the most value out of it. Then there was Cell 240, and I almost beat Cell 240 first try with this build. And then after that, I did like 5 tries where I died a bunch of times and couldn't quite get it until I kind of figured out a pattern that worked for me. But also, I literally beat Cell 240 without taking damage in a previous video, so I have like 8 hours experience on this thing with different builds. So I know all the attacks with Cell 240. I know roughly how to dodge all of them. And that is, again, where we're going to go with this build, where this build is extremely good, but this build requires game knowledge and skill. And once you have those, it's insane. I remember after I beat Cell 240, it's like, yeah, I could have beat Cell 240 the full assault build, and I would have been like, oh, I beat Cell 240. But I beat Cell 240 with this build, and it made me feel afterwards like, holy crap, that was insane. Wow, this is so overpowered. Wow, I'm so good at the game. Those are all the things I was genuinely feeling after killing Cell 240 with this build. Having the fastest build and having a good fast build like this makes you feel this intense satisfaction when you win one of these fights, because it's so much more skillful and fast-paced and intense. It just feels amazing to win one of these fights. So if you can step it up and learn all the mechanics and do everything, this thing is crazy, guys. It was so satisfying, and it just felt so powerful to use against this boss. And then I skipped ahead to the final boss, because I knew Archibus Balteus was going to suck ass with this build. So, assuming that, we went straight to the final boss. And the final boss was a learning curve, for sure. There was a kind of a pattern of how to go in and out of the fight with this build to not get totally destroyed, but not be too far away. Like, there were times, and this happened, I realized after enough times, there are times with these bosses, it's best, even though you're a close-range build, you need to take advantage of the fact that you're fast, and you need to just run away to long range. So there were certain times where it was like, okay, I got some good damage on the boss, and then I just back off because I know that this boss, once you get a lot of close-range damage, it makes someone to go berserk and just spam stuff at you. And if you get far enough away, you're out of range and they can't hit you. And then they just kind of use a bunch of lasers and things, and then you kind of feel like they're cooled down from it, and then they're a little bit easier to come in close again and then try to get things without just getting totally screwed. So there was kind of like an ebb and a flow that I had to learn in order to, you know, use this build to its fullest against the final boss. But once I learned that, I was able to just beat the final boss pretty easily. I think with some practice, definitely with some practice, I could beat the final boss probably almost 100% consistently with this build, I would imagine. It's just learning the ins and outs and the ebb and the flow of how to do it. But because how fast you are, the world's your oyster on this one. It's if you get good enough because how fast this is, you can do whatever you want. You can win any fight you want if you can get the skill level high enough for it. It's crazy. And then I saved the most painful for last. Oh man, the hard counter to this build though was Archibus Balteus. This one was the absolute worst thing to fight with this, mainly because he is just so damn tanky, man. It just takes so long to get through him, and he has that ridiculous purple laser beam attack, and he has multiple versions of it. And me personally, I didn't feel like sitting there for 8 hours fighting him to memorize and just battle harden myself against all his laser attacks and know how to dodge all of them perfectly. I did not want to do that. So instead, I did this thing I kept doing where I would dodge the first one and then fly over his head, and then he'd spin around underneath me like it was a rave or something, and then I would use up his purple laser. And after that, everything's pretty dodgeable. I mean, he has this dumb purple electricity attack, and it's kind of annoying to dodge, but with how fast you are, if you get really good at it, you can. He's just insanely good at like predicting where you might go with it. It's kind of horrible, but main thing was just the purple laser beam. Everything else actually wasn't that bad. It's time consuming to kill him, but you know, and even wasn't even that time consuming compared to the missile build that I did, you know, earlier. But so yeah, the main thing was purple laser. And if he does the one where he just does some crazy spin to win one, I don't know. I guess you get over his head, and if you don't get over his head in time, you just die. Because he can hit for like 7,500 damage. I literally got one shot by one of the lasers before, so I was like, okay. But again, that goes back to the original point I was making by second boss clips here, was this is a high skill cap build. This build, if you want to make it feel like you're the greatest thing ever, you've got to learn the fights. But if you do learn the fights, you have the highest outplay potential of anything in the game. It's actually crazy. You can just spam duckets till they're stunned, and then go in and spam the laser dagger on them. And you just do it over and over and over again, and you just win. And they can't do anything, because if you're good enough, you just dodge every single attack. And it's totally busted. And it's so satisfying to use. Every time I got a kill, I felt like I was the greatest gamer who ever lived. It was amazing. It felt so satisfying. And that's it, guys. That's the build. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's really fun. I highly recommend doing it if you want to, play at a higher skill cap on the game. Extremely satisfying to use this build. Extremely fun. Out of the builds I've done so far, I rate this one 10 out of 10 on the fun scale, 10 out of 10 on the satisfaction scale. scale, and I would say maybe like a 8.5 or 9 out of 10 on the OP as hell scale, with full assault being a 10 out of 10. This one's like a 9 or 8 out of 10. It's insanely strong. Nothing's as good as being a tank with double stun needles and Gatling guns. That's the most at least for PvE, that's the most overpowered thing. But this thing's a close second. And this one with high enough skill, you can actually probably just take no damage on boss fights and stuff. So on the high skill cap, it's probably even better than the full assault, to be honest with you. But there you have it, guys. The share ID code's in the description of this video below the first paragraph. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you have fun with this one. And that was the Dual Striker fastest build in Armored Core 6.